My friends, welcome. We are live. We are going to be streaming and talking specifically about 1 Samuel chapter 18. Please join us. The StreamYard link should be posted now. And I'll see you guys soon. You have 5 minutes to grab your Bibles. Hello, everyone. Cassandra specifically, but everyone else as well,
Morning
who I'm sure are out there.
or afternoon for you, I guess.
Yes, yeah, it's just begun. It's my 1 o'clock. Special greetings to everyone. I don't know if you were aware of this, Cassandra, but it is a holiday today. Did you know that?
It's October 3rd.
Oh, no. No, the Mean Girls holiday.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
October
see,
3rd.
Yoav knows. Yoav knows. It is the Feast of Trumpets, also known as the head of the year, Rosh Hashanah. Um, it is also, if you have not heard this, a lot of Christians don't know about this. It is considered to be the day of judgment. So thank you, Cassandra,
Oh,
for joining me on the day of judgment. Very, very important
okay.
day. Um, so you are supposed to hear the trumpet blast. And let me just pull it up. Sorry, I had it a second ago. Um, the Mishnah contains the second known reference to Rosh Hashanah as the Day of Judgment. In the Talmud tractate on Rosh Hashanah, it states that 3 books of account are opened on Rosh Hashanah, whereas the fate of the wicked, the righteous, and those of the indeterminate class are recorded. So basically, in heaven on this day, books are opened. You want to be in the book of life, okay, Cassandra? And for that
Right.
reason, there is a blessing which is said today, which is, may your name be written in the book of life. It's like the nicest thing someone could say to you. But
Okay.
what if you're not in the book of life, but you're also not terrible? You have a last chance to repent in the days leading up to Yom Kippur. That is your absolute last chance to repent. So in Judaism, trumpets, the judgment, and a last opportunity to repent are all tied together. For those who know the Book of Revelations, I think a couple of your ears might be pricked by that, going, "That sounds familiar." Yeah, yeah. Now, why in Jewish tradition, on the day where you're celebrating the Day of Judgment, you read the part where um, the only begotten child is almost sacrificed? I mean, that's up to you guys. You got to figure that out yourself. Can't figure out everything. Michael Sartori, how are you,
Hello.
sir?
Good. How are you?
Doing great. Doing great.
Okay. I'm gonna mute this because I'm gonna have to make noise, but
Okay.
I'm here.
Michael, may you also be written in the book of life. Everyone who gets to listen to this stream, I hope that you get written in the book of life, okay?
Mhm.
Whether or not you hear a hollowed out ram's horn blown. Uh, we're going to jump into the scriptures. We are in 1 Samuel chapter 18. Goliath has been slain, all that good stuff. And yeah, let's just get into it.
As soon as he had finished speaking to Saul, the soul of Jonathan was knit to the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. And Saul took him that day and would not let him return to his father's house. Then Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as his own soul. And Jonathan stripped himself of the robe that was on him and gave it to David, and his armor, and even his sword, and his bow, and his belt. And David went out and was successful wherever Saul sent him, so that Saul set him over the men of war. And this was good in the sight of all the people, and also in the sight of Saul's servants.
Okay, that was what a great little opening. So David and Jonathan are very good friends. Obviously, that is something which people know quite well. But this language is used. It's an interesting one. The word soul, because in Hebrew the word is nefesh, and nefesh is could be your life, could be your life force, your soul. Could literally be translated as throat as well. It's such an interesting image because if you like when you slaughter an animal, right, you slice open their throat and all the life gets out, right?
Mm.
Um, but it's much more embodied in Hebrew thinking. The notion of what we call soul. Sometimes you even get the idea of soul as life force, but it's more embodied. It's more fleshy. So it could literally just mean your neck, right? Two people could embrace and like literally have their necks against each other. So that would be an image of intimacy. But it's also an image of like someone committing their life. This is the most delicate part of you. You get what I mean? It's
Yeah.
yeah. That's why Michael grows that long beard to cover up all of his vulnerability.
Yeah. I think it's wolves. Like when they fight, they'll have like their female that they're partnered with. She'll go underneath and like block his throat with her own head and stuff like that while they're fighting.
Oh.
And I was thinking about that when they talk about armor bearers. I was like, it's kind of feels similar to that too. But yeah, when the alphas are fighting or something like that, that's what they do to protect the neck from getting ripped out, because that's what they'll go for first.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. And there's a military medal, which is this little thing that's like shaped like that, and it'll be worn as like a necklace, and it comes from the last piece of armor that people wore was just a neck covering, and that thing becomes smaller and smaller until it even just becomes a necklace as a reminder of the position that someone would have had. But then Jonathan strips himself of his robe and he gives it to David along with his armor, his bow, his belt, and his sword. And Yoav, I thought of you because Yoav was saying before that the major weapon in war was a spear. Now, I believe swords were used as a sidearm. Yoav was kind of saying, no, I don't think so. But what Yoav was saying is that the sword was often symbolic of someone's authority of holding a sword. And so if Yoav's perspective is correct, then Jonathan giving David his sword is also saying something about David being in a real position of authority. Right?
Right.
We have not seen in the text that Saul dislikes David in any way yet, but he's kind of being put in the position of almost the prince, like the next in line. Jonathan was put in a special position to have a sword in particular because there's no blacksmiths in the land of Israel. Do you have any thoughts before we move on?
No, I guess when they say they make a covenant, what does that mean? Does it say like what it's entailing? Later on?
It could just be like there's systems where you make someone ritualistically your brother kind of a thing, where they're just like we're in it together, right? It seems like it could be like a blood brothers thing almost.
Okay, yeah.
Michael, do you have anything to say?
Well, so is this after David's been anointed and all that, right? So
right.
So I mean, it seems like Jonathan is seeing the potential for like a non-patriarchal system of succession, and he's kind of throwing his support behind David in a way, assuming that he will survive, that his father's not going to keep being a jerk or whatever, and that it's going to end up costing him his own life. But
well, and there later in, it may even be in this chapter itself, that there's both ways. One, right now Saul is in power, so making a covenant with Jonathan means Jonathan's going to make sure that David doesn't get killed.
Yeah.
But it goes the other way too, that David's family does not trust any remnant existing in Saul's family. And David makes sure that the children of he has to look after his offspring. And there's this character who comes up repeatedly where Jonathan has a disabled son.
Right.
And he's kept alive by David. David makes sure nothing bad ever happens to him.
Yeah. Well, because it's like, obviously they don't know how everything's going to play out. It could even be like to think like maybe, they're under the assumption that like Saul's just going to do what he's going to do, and Jonathan will take the throne like when he dies or something, and then Jonathan would just kind of step aside for David. Like that could have been a way that that if they're trying to imagine like how it's going to go, and so David David also have that mutual loyalty. They're both in a sense they're both acting selflessly instead of selfishly trying to. So, I think they are. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you think of in a tribalistic society, people would experience threat from whoever the guy who's strongest and next to them is.
Yeah. Which, obviously, that's the thing that always makes those, it happens later on with the kings of Israel,
right.
Judah. They have that very insecure hierarchy, and then they have to always like be wary of anybody else getting too powerful, which weakens the whole thing because if the king has to be the strongest guy,
right,
especially the older they get, the more they're going to start compromising things to like retain that power. Because it's like if God says you are going to be the person that's going to be number 2, like
right,
your life is going to be great if you accept being number 2, and if you rebel against that, then it's going to go horrible for you. So like, and I mean, I don't know, that's the thing. It's like one guy gets to be king, so that means somebody else is going to be number 2. You should be happy if you are the one that gets to be number 2.
And like we can see it even in modern politics. So in Canada, Pierre Trudeau was our prime minister, and a lot of people really, really liked him a lot. And his son, Justin Trudeau, was a drama teacher and was like a stupid Canadian celebrity. So he hosted like Canadian Idol. Putting Michael on mute. And why did people, he's not he's not an incredible political philosopher. It's just his relationship to someone that we all liked was enough for him to get elected, right? So you can see how people would feel threatened by that. I remembered his dad. I liked his dad, right? Like what kind of allegiance that might motivate. Stupid, but it's true.
Right.
Okay, Sandra, go ahead. Cassandra, you start something as a joke and then you can't unjoke it.
As they were coming home, when David returned from striking down the Philistine, the women came out of all the cities of Israel singing and dancing to meet King Saul with tambourines, with songs of joy, and with musical instruments. And the women sang to one another as they celebrated, Saul has struck down his thousands, and David his 10,000s.
Ooh, those ladies. Look at like women are causing the problems here. Like, right?
Is that passive aggressive?
No.
That they're singing that?
I don't know. It's to me, it echoes Miriam's song after the defeat of Pharaoh. Oh, Michael's coming on.
Well, that's like the whole point of the thing we were just saying. It's like you're in the song. Be happy that you're in the song. Don't worry about that somebody else is better that's in the song. Like.
And Saul could have fought Goliath himself. sitting around for days upon days where Goliath is making the challenge. What does it say? 40 days. Then David shows up and fights him. And now you're mad that David's getting the credit? It's what you get. It's what you get. Yeah. But yeah, it sounds to me like the defeat of Pharaoh. I made connections before about the Philistines in Egypt, where they may have received some kind of funding from Egypt and stuff like that. So I think it's a big deal. And then after the defeat, oh, Michael's coming back. Go ahead.
Oh, I just was going to check. I was going to mute myself, but you had already muted me.
I mute you when you walk away. If you walk
Okay.
towards me, I'll unmute you so that you can say your thing.
That's a good system.
Yeah, good. So, so again, after the defeat of Pharaoh, Miriam comes out, tambourine, sings a song. So we have that song again. Does seem a little bit passive aggressive, but it's like,
I guess it could also be a sign maybe of his waning authority in Israel, right? Like people, like there's a slow change that's happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because from the previous chapters, we know Saul likes his image, you know, to keep up appearances and stuff like that. So this probably was very annoying to him, to say the least, that they're making songs about him now being lesser or second to David.
But it's like there's situations where there'll be basketball players who are known for the number of assists, right? Same thing in hockey, where it's like there's some people that score and there's some people that consistently set people up to score. And you need both. You don't want...
Oh, yeah. Well, no, you can keep saying your thing. I'll wait.
Yeah, where you need, like, you want to have more than one great player. You don't just want a Wayne Gretzky. You want the people who are very good at passing, right? I think that's a part of Dennis Rodman, was that he was known for setting up other people. Like that is very, very important. And as you were saying, Cassandra, if you are secure and you're surrounded by people who are loyal to you, that's good. You're not threatened by other people of skill being around you.
Yeah, and I mean, I was going to say, just as a general, in sort of the king, you know, being the king, but it works, I think, just as well with like the sports analogy. You know, it's like the team wins, but the coach is responsible for losing or whatever. Like he gives the glory to the team, and he for winning, and he takes the responsibility for losing on himself, and like that's good leadership or whatever, because you know that's going to continue to motivate and bring the best out of the people underneath you, which if you are being part of it, like that's
right.
That's like that is the role of the leader of the team, is to do that, because that's what makes the team as a whole the best, you know. Because if you start blaming your key player when on the one time when they screw up, it's going to get in their head and they're going to mess up and all this stuff. So yeah, Saul's just a terrible king. That's it. But I think you know, we already knew that.
Right. Yeah, and it's one of those things where people talk about a high tide lifts all boats, right? We have expressions like that to express an idea of wanting everyone to be doing well. And this is his number one guy, right? He has his son's armor on. This is his head, right? It's a very interesting image. Let's continue on.
And Saul was very angry, and the saying displeased him. He said, "They have ascribed to David 10,000, and to me they have ascribed thousands. And what more can he have but the kingdom?" And Saul eyed David from that day on. The next day, a harmful spirit from God rushed upon Saul, and he raved within his house, while David was playing the lyre, as he did day by day. Saul had a spear in his hand, and Saul hurled the spear, for he thought, "I will pin David to the wall." But David evaded him twice.
Twice? He did it more than once. I say liar, by the way.
Liar.
Yeah. But again, we have that harmful spirit of God rushed upon Saul, right? And he raved within himself, within his house, while David was playing the lyre. So there's an image, remember, the harmful spirit that David could calm in him, but now he's not just against God, he's against David, who's being blessed by God. So now he can't even be calmed by David.
Right.
It's like what's his name? Stalin like executed a whole bunch of doctors when he was because he saw them as the political class, as the bourgeois. So let's kill all the doctors. Well, guess what happens when Stalin has a stroke? You don't have the best doctor. Where are the good doctors? Well, you executed them. So now let's see who's going to be able to help you out. Yeah, so there's two separate accounts, Yoav, of Saul killing himself. Once is him leaning on his spear, and one is on his sword, as best I know. But we are coming up to a story where David's sword is important because he takes the sword of Goliath. But yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, using the spear to pin him to the wall. Yeah. Twice though. Like, what does David do after this?
You'd think you would leave, but I guess I don't know. If the king wants you there, I guess you have to stay.
That's right. Yeah.
And I don't know, David, it doesn't always seem like he's afraid that much either. Or bothered by things. Like when his brother was saying, like, you have an evil heart and stuff, he kind of almost acts like whatever, it's not a big deal. In the text, it says he just says, like, why are you yelling at me? And then he goes and continues talking to other people. But, like, I don't know. He seems unbothered.
I know you are, but what am I?
So, yeah. But, yeah, you'd think he'd leave and stuff, but he stays around and he respects Saul.
Right. Yeah, and there's some of the images within this. Again, this sounds to me like Macbeth. There's a scene after Macbeth has turned away where, what's the line that he says to his wife? Full of scorpions is my mind. Where they start going mad because of their turning away from God. As they turn away from God, they lose their own sense of what's real, what's true, and what's good. And so, yeah, that's what's happening with Saul right there. But this image of his madness, raved within himself, right? It's clearly the harmful spirit is not, he's just experiencing pain. He's going crazy. It's like the worst form of prophecy, right? Raving is going crazy, whereas prophecy is like this good message, this thing that's sourced from God comes forward in this really great way. It ain't that. Okay, continue on for us.
Saul was afraid of David because the Lord was with him, but had departed from Saul. So Saul removed him from his presence and made him a commander of 1,000. And he went out and came in before the people. And David had success in all his undertakings, for the Lord was with him. And when Saul saw that he had great success, he stood in fearful awe of him. But all Israel and Judah loved David, for he went out and came in before them.
Cassandra, why does it say, but all Israel and Judah loved David?
Because they split by this time. Or
that's right. Yeah. And so especially Benjamin will be identified as Israel. So the idea is it's not just that David is loved by his own, he's loved by everyone. That makes him a real unifying figure. It's not just Judah, all Israel and Judah love David.
He's a real king.
I thought Benjamin is with Judah after the split. It's Judah and Benjamin. It's and the rest is Ephraim or whatever, right? Israel is Ephraim.
How does this? I think it goes back and forth. I think Benjamin is also known as Israel for a period of time in the immediate break, like as the kingdoms are pushed and pulled. It'll be Judah and everyone else. Yeah. This is also interesting because in battles, I like what Yoav is saying. You don't miss twice in close quarters. Useless warrior. So Yoav is really hinting at this, but I think he could still get out of the way because it's straight up said that the Lord is with David, right? And you would have this in ancient battles where some people would say, we have to stick with that guy. That guy is lucky, right? And lucky used to mean blessed. If you went with that person, you were safe. My wife is one of these people. We went to vacation in England, and whenever we arrived anywhere, people would say to us, it has been raining for the past 2 weeks and stopped as soon as you arrived. Like that happens repeatedly for my wife. She is a lucky person. So yeah. Any other comments before we move
on? Well, that reminds me of I don't know, probably the last time I can remember driving with my grandmother when I was like, I don't know, 20 or something. And I was like, holy crap, angels are everywhere, because she somehow didn't see about 19 cars that should have hit her and didn't on a very short drive. So
yeah. It's a weird experience when you're around people who are lucky, because it does not seem, all of a sudden it's like, how is this possible?
And then my dad and his brothers, the doctor was like, you can't drive anymore. And she just went and got a bunch of keys made and hid them places and would just sneak out. Because she had to go meet her girlfriends for coffee. So
yeah. Well, and Cassandra, you kind of said the opposite, that you had a family member that was unlucky. And it was like that unluck would follow them from place to place too. Where it's like, we can set ourselves up to be able to receive or deny possible gifts that God gives. We can find ourselves deeply embittered. Yeah. Got to mute that Sartori. Okay, and now, when your boss doesn't like you, maybe don't marry the boss's daughter. But okay, here we go.
Don't give your daughter to your enemy.
Refusing your boss's daughter is also, dangerous, though. So.
That's a good point. It's a good point there.
This is like a mafia thing, basically.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of that, little bit of mafia going on. But yeah. How close do you keep your enemies? Maybe a little too close. Okay, Cassandra, read for us.
Then Saul said to David, here is my elder daughter, Merab. I will give her to you for a wife. Only be valiant for me and fight the Lord's battles. For Saul thought, let not my hand be against him, but let the hand of the Philistines be against him. And David said to Saul, who am I and who are my relatives, my father's clan in Israel, that I should be son-in-law to the king? But at the time when Merab, Saul's daughter, should have been given to David, she was given to Adriel, the Meholathite, for a wife.
Okay. Now, I see something in here, and I don't know if it's going to seem too close or like, sorry, that I'm stretching this. This is how Uriah gets killed. is Saul says, I'm not going to use my own sword, but I will use the sword of my enemy. So it's this weird sort of thing because continue fighting the Lord's battles, right? Because God is with you and everything else. But what his hope is he says, I'm going to put you in this position and then you're going to be able to receive my daughter. But that position, it is a courageous position, but it's also a dangerous position. It's a place where the Philistines would have more opportunity to kill him.
Yeah, well, let's see here. So
I feel like we are in an Indian in the cupboard, and Michael is.
You are in the cupboard.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess I have to think about that part more with the Uriah connection. But it's interesting. Immediately, what it reminded me of is Laban with the older younger daughter thing, and then switching them around.
Oh, yeah.
So, I wonder. Yeah, I mean, I wonder. It doesn't tell us does it say? I don't know. Does it say if so she loved David, the younger daughter, but it didn't say if there was one was more beautiful or anything like that. Or
it's very interesting in the text how we're just gonna say Michelle.
Yeah.
Okay, you can say McCall, but we're just gonna call her Michelle. Okay. I will. Thank you, Yoav. Never mind. I'm not going to say that. I have no idea what I was just about to say. I lost it.
Something about the daughters.
Yeah. So she is referred to over and over again as Saul's daughter. And then in her allegiance with David, she is then referred to as the wife of David and as her name. But in the end, once she turns away from David, she then again becomes referred to as the daughter of Saul, the daughter of Saul.
Yeah, well, because she gets given away again to somebody else, right?
Yes. And so
he's kind of Saul's kind of like a double, with both of the girls.
I feel so sorry for her, but there's so much drama related to her because she's the one who says, "Shall the king become so undignified?"
Yeah, and I feel like that's the streak that's that's the part of the Saul's legacy in that way.
And that in the end, even though she's come back to become David's wife, she's still in that story referred to as the daughter of Saul. Because in the end, she is undermining him.
Yeah.
I mean, I have some sympathy because now she's
I wonder if you could say, because it's like in Genesis 2 when it says that, a man will leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife. And she hasn't really, by her actions, she hasn't left her father and clung to her husband as she should.
It's a great parallel, Michael. Okay, let's continue on. So Saul is hoping the Philistines will kill David on their behalf.
Okay.
Continue.
Now Saul's daughter Michelle loved David, and they told Saul, and the thing pleased him. Saul thought, let me give her to him that she may be a snare for him, and that the hand of the Philistines may be against him. Therefore Saul said to David a second time, "You shall now be my son-in-law." And Saul commanded his servants, "Speak to David in private and say, Behold, the king has delight in you, and all his servants love you. Now then, become the king's son-in-law." And Saul's servants spoke those words in the ears of David, and David said, "Does it seem to you a little thing to become the king's son-in-law, since I am a poor man and have no reputation?" And the servants of Saul told him, "Thus and so did David speak." Then Saul said, "Thus shall you say to David, The king desires no bride price, except 100 foreskins of the Philistines, that he may be avenged of the king's enemies. Now Saul thought to make David fall by the hand of the Philistines. And when his servants told David these words, it pleased David well to be king's. It pleased David well to be the king's son-in-law. Before the time had expired, David arose and went, along with his men, and killed 200 of the Philistines. And David brought their foreskins, which were given in full number to the king, that he might become the king's son-in-law. And Saul gave him his daughter Michal for a wife. But when Saul saw and knew that the Lord was with David, and that Michal, Saul's daughter, loved him, Saul was even more afraid of David. So Saul was David's enemy continually.
Okay, let's pause for one moment, and just remember. I think there's a lot to what Michael is saying about the connection with Laban, because he brings twice as much as what was required, just as Jacob works twice as long for Rachel than what was required of him, because Saul requires 100 foreskins, and David brings back 200 foreskins.
It's interesting too. I don't know when. Can you scroll back up?
Which part are you wanting?
Where like this is a weird thing. Like why Saul says that she's going to be a snare against him for the Philistines.
Well, he's the father. Like David doesn't have anything. It is very similar to Jacob. David doesn't have anything, so he can't pay whatever the bridal price would be.
Yeah.
So what are we going to do? And he says, this will be your bridal price.
So, but this is the thing. This is the question I have. So, why does he say she may be a snare for him at the hand of the Philistine? Oh, you mean just because he's going to demand that he? Okay, so because he demands that he goes out and goes on this fool's errand of collecting these foreskins, right?
It's this really bizarre thing, because by keeping him close, he can keep tabs on him. His daughter can be his mouthpiece, but then he's also, through this action, like there's great irony in this. Through this, David gains more esteem and more legitimacy as a king.
Yeah.
He's married the princess now, so he's even closer, right? But the hope is I can use this to undermine him, to take him out.
Yeah. What was the other thing? It also kind of reminds me of Samson. Because whatever. I mean, like, because how many Philistines does he kill, like, or whatever, right before his wedding? Is it 200, something like that?
Oh, I can't remember. I can't remember the exact number.
But like, yeah. Well, it's interesting too, because I was thinking about, like, I don't know. It's weird because it is Philistines, and then so I guess it was. I mean, yeah. I guess that makes sense. That the thing that was going to be it was this mission to go get the foreskins that he was thinking, like, David's going to get killed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes the most sense. But well, because there is this kind of thing where it's like Samson is treating with these Philistines and getting into these marriages, and then like with Delilah, her loyalty is clearly more to her people, like, and her father. I don't. Is it the father mentioned? I can't remember exactly, but right. The things there, and I mean, this kind of is an interesting thing when we get to it. Well, actually, it's not in this chapter, is it? When David sneaks off?
It's the next chapter.
Oh, okay. Because, first you have household gods and deception, which is very similar to Rachel, and this is the younger daughter. But it's also kind of like the thing. It's like Delilah backfires or whatever, because she does show her loyalty to David in that moment.
Mm-hmm. And this breaks the pattern. Repeatedly, there are two children of the leaders who are disobedient to their parents, but in that way, they're disobedient towards God, right? So Eli has the two sons. Samuel has two rebellious children as well. And Saul has two children who are against him, but they're against him because they're on God's side instead
Yeah.
of being wicked.
Yeah. Well, it's just like, I mean, it's like I don't know. It's weird. It's weird too, because I wonder just how much like the timeline of this stuff gets compressed and we don't know what's going on.
How
Because
long?
like was Saul even was he even married before he was king? I don't know if it tells us that or anything. I don't know if it tells us like when he took wives or whatever. But you know, just to think, like just even you know, up until David's anointing anyway, he's this conflicted guy, but you have to assume he's more or less telling his children, like, God's chosen me for this important task of being king, and we have to honor God. And like, you know, maybe he's doing the thing where, you know, I think that's very typical that like even if you are a compromised person, you try to teach your children values, like maybe, you know, you're expecting like, oh, when my kids grow up, I'm going to like let them in on the seedy underbelly of the family business. But like while they're growing up, you try to teach them, because you want them to be like good kids that reflect well on you in society. And so I wonder if it's kind of just like they took to heart the lessons that he tried to share that were good, but they and maybe now as they're like becoming adults, they're seeing like, oh, our father is kind of a hypocrite. Like he's not the guy that we all thought he was.
Yeah. And that to me is also the tragedy of the character.
Yeah.
And that's just about to happen as well. Which is Saul is going to prophesy again. In like a chapter, he's going to be prophesying. It's going to be God's mouthpiece again. He doesn't have to be doing this. Cassandra, can you finish off for us this chapter? Because we're at 30 right now.
Then the commanders of the Philistines came out to battle, and as often as they came out, David had more success than all the servants of Saul, so that his name was highly esteemed.
Yeah. So David's that reputation that Saul didn't like has become greater because Saul put him in harm's way. That's what's going on. Cassandra, any thoughts you have on this chapter?
I don't know. I was thinking about the pattern of like when someone has a wife who has perhaps ambivalent loyalty. Like you brought up Samson earlier because she, you know, she wasn't really like all on his side or something like that. And then Michelle kind of has that same thing because she's the king's daughter, but she loves David. So her something about her loyalty where she stands a split. That you could go back and forth. And I'm trying to think of other things. I think there's examples like when I don't know if it's like they marry a bad woman or maybe something like that, but that seems to be a pattern too. Like you either give in to your wife too much when you should say no, or something, or she leads you down. I mean, kind of again, we keep referencing Macbeth, or is that something kind of
yeah. No, that's perfect. Where the wife is like, "You're going to do this. I want you like, you have to be a man. Do it, right?" And what is the proverb exactly? It's a mother instructing her son and says, "My son, do not give your strength to women." Like is something that a mother says, and you can read it and go, "Oh, like that's so, like that's sexist. That's old timey." It's just like, yeah, because you don't know any men and their whose downfall was a woman. You don't know any men where that's the case, where they're willing to do such stupid things because they give their strength to a woman.
Yeah, I was thinking about it because like in the Adam and Eve story, Adam kind of just goes along with
Mhm.
it, and maybe he should have been more proactive in that. And then, Job's wife is always telling him to curse God and die. And then, like, there's kind of examples of kind of maybe they're giving into their wife. And then I was thinking about this when I was watching Peugeot talk about Jesus's first miracle, where his mom asks him to do something and he says, "It's not my time to die yet."
Mhm.
So it's like he's kind of saying no to her, and he still does the wine miracle, but he's like setting a certain boundary.
Right, right.
And then his story, then it goes along like it's supposed to.
Right.
Everything happens as it should. So I don't know. I was thinking about that. There's certain, I guess, I don't know if it's just a boundary thing. You need to you have to enforce certain kind of things with your spouse
Right.
as a
And
husband.
it's the issue of Ruth versus Delilah, right? Is this someone who, by bringing them in, you're tainted? Or is it by bringing them in, you have a greater claim to rule more people, right? You become a bridge between everything. But in some cases, people say, no, 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 it's not a bridge. They're tainted.
Right.
They're compromised.
It's very interesting. It's interesting. It touches on that Matthew Peugeot video where he came up talking about how like the woman is supposed to be like the place of rest, and that's definitely, I think, a theme. With Solomon and Proverbs, and talking about how, like, it's better to live on the corner of a roof than with a contentious wife, and like like how, why don't we don't ask the question of like, why was Boaz still single since he's such like an honorable man and all this stuff, and perhaps he was like too gentle of a spirit for the the average local woman. And then like the fact that he gets this this wife from another culture, and it's like they are a good match. Like, because I wonder if almost like the strangeness or the difference or whatever makes it more possible for peace. Like, because I think when you're in a culture where you have all these expectations, like, and everybody probably gets it to a certain extent, like, well, in my family, my dad took care of that thing, and well, in my family, my mom did this, and then like, but if you marry somebody from across the other side of the world, that's a stupid thing to say. Like,
Right, right.
you should be way more inclined to say, tell me about your parents and what roles they, did with how you ran the household. And, because you don't that your expectations are going to be totally foreign. So then you come into a place of like, let's build on, like, start with no expectations, start from scratch,
Right.
and build a thing together.
Well, and it's interesting, Michael. I wonder if Yoav can give a comment on this. The word for house and the word for daughter sound like the same. It's like bet and buy it, right? It's like it sounds so similar. The notion of the woman creating the household, what the expectations are. I knew an old school Italian family, and the guy, he falls in love with what I used to hear referred to as a manja cake. It's not a non-Italian, just a white lady. And before they get married, she goes over and learns how to cook all of the food that his mom would make. It was like, in order for them to get married, for her to keep house for him, it's like, you got to learn how to cook the food. And she actually went over and learned, this is how you make the Sunday sauce. This is how you make lasagna. This is how you make noodles from scratch. This is like all those things, right? Creating the environment.
My mom not only learned all of my Nana's recipes, but she collected them in a book and shared them all with the rest of the family. So, but yeah, because she was the outsider, and yeah, she wanted to learn how to cook Italian food. So,
Yeah. Also, Italian food's great. Yoav,
Yep.
am I way off on daughter in house? Do you think? What do
Well,
you think?
you keep surprising me and not letting a lot time to really think about the issue. But I will tell you what I think.
That's great.
Bite is extremely ancient. Of course, it's in common use. It's in a language. It's of course it will be one of the, let's say, the first words in the language. And bite will be associated with the mouth, with pe. And I think it goes back to the time where people were living in caves.
Right.
Because bite will be some kind of a cave-like structure. Unlike like in German, when you're living in a schloss, when you're thinking about a castle. The word for daughter, bat, I think it's just the female form of a ben. Because in ancient Hebrew, when you move from the masculine to the feminine, you add the T at the end. Unlike in ancient but later Hebrew, when you add ha at the end. So it will be Yeled, boy, Yalda, girl, in later Hebrew. But in a deeper layer, it will be ben male and bat female. And it's, I think it goes the same way in ancient Egyptian. So and Hebrew and ancient Egyptian are really they joined together really in very early prehistory. So I would not associate bat with bite.
Okay.
Except, it's an association that people keep in mind over the ages. It will keep the words from drifting apart. So the word will stay, because words will change over millennia. And if the words are holding heads together and keeping an association with each other, they will last for longer. So there is some, obviously, there is some truth in your guess, but I think it's secondary.
Okay. Anything else that you wanted to add in from any of the stuff we were talking today?
Do you have time?
I think we have time. Yeah,
Okay.
Go ahead.
Imagine the random conversation between Paul van der Klee and Samuel. And Samuel describing his childhood, because that's how the conversation would start.
Right.
And he's coming from a very disrupted childhood. Actually, he didn't grow up in a normal family. He grew up in a temple, adopted by a family that was not a good example for a growing up boy.
Right.
And the priest was not a very good teacher. The priest was quite a failure with his own two sons. And I don't think he was a very much of a good influence on Samuel. And Samuel grew up without much of a good example. And he wasn't a good teacher to his own children.
Yeah.
So he was a very good prophet and a devout man and a man of God, lousy teacher. So when he is coming to educate Saul, he doesn't. All he does is give him tests that he would fail. Like the time he arrived late and Saul made the wrong sacrifice. Why couldn't Samuel be there a day earlier, 2 days earlier, and say to Saul, this is going to be a historical event. We are going to a war that is going to go down in history. and we're going to do this ceremony. Everybody's going to watch us and record us. Let's make sure we don't screw up that event. Let's do it, let's do a rehearsal. A day earlier, we are going to do a rehearsal, and worry what your position, and what you're going to say, and I know my position, and I know what I'm going to say, and then the date comes and everything goes perfect. This is exactly what Samuel didn't do. And Saul grew up, or came into the position of a king without a user guide, without a consultant, without any, when a king comes into a court, there are always the old ministers and the old consultants, and he had, king usually has somebody to ask. Saul didn't have anybody to consult with. And he was just a peasant. And I just commented today over the comment section, he wasn't not even a warrior. He didn't, know how to use the...
Right, yeah, they weren't allowed to have weapons. So then he has a weapon. What does he do with it?
No, but they would know how to use spears. Everybody knew how to use spears.
Yeah, but spear is a pointy stick. Spear is very, but it's not as complicated.
You cannot supervise it, because somebody go to the backyard and it get the pointy sticks, and as a child, you should practice throwing out the sticks and dogs and cats.
Yeah.
And he didn't. He was just, he knew everything you had to know about oxen and about asses.
It's a very good point, Yoav, because I think we have to have sympathy for the characters, because even someone like Solomon he has peace in his reign, but he doesn't, because David was a warrior. Solomon is able to have peace in his day because of David. And same thing, Saul and Samuel are coming out of a terrible time. Like the time of the judges is the worst time. So to have these people who are monsters, maybe in some cases, but they are men for their time. They're great for their time, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was thinking about how there is. I hadn't thought about Samuel, but it makes sense, and almost like perhaps nature versus nurture. That what he got on the nature side was very good. His mother was a very good person, and and his father loved her well, but he loses out on living within that good environment. And you can say a similar thing of like Moses. And then I even thought about Adam, he didn't have a mother. And then, when he meets Eve, it's like there's it's like a mystery or whatever. And and I think that the whole story is kind of like this, just showing how, because he started off in a place of ignoring good advice, right, or not even really being able to tell, because how do you tell the difference between truth and lies the first time you encounter dissonant statements? And then this whole story is just the working through of humanity, and then more specifically through Israel, the people learning this really through experience, how and that God gives them these teachings along the way, but they always have to mess it up first. And it's always that, it's always the mess up always comes before they do it the right way. So
when I was trying to write my first script, I co-wrote it with a friend, and he would write these monologues, and I'd say, "Oh, just wait, this happened?" And he said, "Well, I don't care." He was able to let his characters lie, and when I first started writing, I forgot that people could lie. Right? Like, it just seemed like the strangest thing, where I was like, oh yeah, I guess people lie all the time, don't they? Like, yeah, where that becomes surprising to you how that stuff's tied together.
Last time we met, somebody commented about the story sounding too obviously a smear campaign by the house of David against the house of Saul. I mean, when one gets the impression that that Saul gets a bad press from the Bible, and
Who doesn't?
yeah, well, yeah, exactly. That's the final. That will be my final answer, because the question raises: is the Bible about the politics of the now? Is the Bible just a frozen up political argument, or is the Bible the eternal book of truth? And that's exactly the answer. The Bible is the complete catalog of all human failures, those of the house of Saul and those of the house of David. The fact that you can see the smear campaign against Saul in the Bible, it is part of the story.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say as well that there's drama in it. He's not what do you call it? Like a cartoon villain where there's only bad and only stupid, and you say to yourself, what an idiot. Instead, he's a tragic figure whom you love, you can see yourself in, and you can see your own flaws in. Not a cartoon. He's real. He's so real to me. Saul terrifies me.
You know what's the interesting thing too, thinking about like this thing from a point of like, well, I guess if you say like if David is kind of engineering a smear campaign or something, but like, you know, within his household, he was the afterthought. So, you know, he's been living under, you know, I guess, you know, from what we can presume of Jesse and his older brothers and stuff, that they didn't take him seriously. And I think that, you know, produces a kind of a competitive spirit. But then, like, in comparison, like, he's put under the authority of Saul and his household, and it is, like, probably just such a joke in comparison that maybe he's not even thinking about, like, should I be embarrassing this guy? Like, it just is, it's just second nature or something.
Yeah, I'm not blaming David in anything. I'm blaming the house of David later.
Right.
When sort of the story moves from the verbal to the written. There is some editing here. And the editing itself is another story of human failure. It's a different story of human failure.
I mean, in Chronicles compared to the accounts there, compared to Samuel?
Well, if you want a really thorough analysis of the Hebrew scripture, you shouldn't broadcast on the New Year Eve when the real Jews are not broadcasting. You should have asked the difficult question next week.
Yeah, I wondered about that. I was like, oh, I was surprised. I just assumed we'd have no Jews today. Which, you know what?
No real Jews, but just sinners like myself.
Let me just say, regardless of whether or not you will hear the shofar today, I hope that your name is written in the book of life. May your name be written in the book of life, as they say. Oh, but he went out of existence as soon as I said that.
I was showing you that my name is already written in history.
Okay, good. Yeah, but the book of life. Let's.
Regarding, I don't know what's going to happen next year. Avoiding two spears could be, an act of skill. Avoiding 200 ballistic missiles is the hand of God.
Okay. Yeah. Jason, you can still jump on. Jason is saying he's just paying attention now. Always invited on. I'm going to recommend again for people the show Kings that was on NBC. I don't know of anything else that does as good of a job as showing Saul as the complicated character that he is. They got real actors, not the fake kind, on that show, so I recommend it. If you just type in NBC Kings, I think you should be able to find something.
I don't think I could find it on streaming when I looked, unless there's other shows called Kings.
For a while, it was actually on NBC's website where you could just watch it. You might have to buy it on Amazon.
Another angle, at the beginning on this chapter, there is a presentation by Jordan Peterson about the interplay between the alpha male and the rest of the males in the group. Because everybody knows that alpha male is going to get the women. But the men in the group are tolerating it for the sake of the group that will eventually propagate their seed as well. And this is the unspeakable rule that Saul is breaking. Because he should realize that David is good for the group. And he should accept David getting the best of the female. It's part of the deal. He was envious because of the women singing. He doesn't like the women falling for David, although he was not a young man anymore. So I was defending Saul earlier, but that is basic. That is biological.
I was wondering it myself, if the women praising David, if that upsets him especially in a way that if it was just a bunch of
because there is a connection between the kingdom and access to women.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. And there is a parallel that I'm thinking about is the story of the holiday of Purim, the scroll of Esther. The fall of Haman is when he's kneeling in front of Esther, the queen, is begging for mercy.
Right.
But when the king comes into the room, all he sees a man kneeling in front of his women. And he thinks, he wants my woman, he wants my kingdom. He doesn't distinguish between wanting his women and he wanted his kingdom. And at that moment, Haman fell.
Yeah. Jason is asking your opinion on the almond tree as a symbol and also love.
Why is I will answer, but why is it? What is the connection?
He's dating some girl right now. Not some girl. She's very nice. So I think he just wants general advice. Everyone here. Actually, Yoav, are you married? Are you married, Yoav?
Yes, happily married with children and even a grandson. Okay, almond tree.
He says not love, Luz. Oh, sorry, Luz means almond tree.
Okay, almond tree. I don't know if you have almond trees where you live. If you grew up in a neighborhood where there are lots of male almond trees, you will immediately know the connection between almond tree and love. It's about the smell. It's not something that I can explain. It's prescribed. It's not propositional knowledge. You have to grow up near male almond trees in season, and you will understand by the smell.
Share this. This is an almond tree. You will notice the way
Well,
that it's parting. The menorah is compared to an almond tree.
Well, it's beautiful. It's like the cherry blossom in Japan. I mean, it's worthwhile a
Right.
trip to Israel in January, February, just to see them blossom.
Yeah, something like,
But
look at that.
it's not the fact that they're so beautiful. It's the smell. You have to smell it to understand the connection to love.
Okay. Yeah. Cassandra, you can watch the show on Apple TV. Do you have to pay for it? I don't know.
Oh. For Apple, yeah.
Okay. It's like 8 episodes. It's
Oh.
one season.
We'll see. Since you keep talking about it, I might have to watch it.
You might hate it. It's very dramatic, and it's like, yeah, it's like epic. So sometimes,
Oh, they made them like modern people.
Yes, Goliath is the tank. There, you can see the black dude over there. That is the Reverend Samuels.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a good show. It's a good show. But like, what's his name? The dude who's right next to the black dude. That is what is his name? Ian McShane or something like that. That's Saul. That's Silas. So it's good. Anyway, okay, I think we've gotten into enough things. I greatly appreciate everyone being here. Let me just do a check-in real quick. Yoav, did you have anything else you wanted to add about any of the stuff that we've talked about? No. Michael? No.
Nope.
Cassandra?
No, I don't think so. Towards the end of the conversation we get into, I guess I like what you have said. The Bible is a catalog of human failure, because I've often wondered, is there like, who's the best father figure in the Bible? Because there is a lot of like, his sons suck. His sons like stray away. They do bad things.
It's funny that you say it in that way. The way I say it is, which one of the biblical characters would you let babysit your niece? Right? Jephthah is not someone you'd let. Oh no! What did you do? Right?
Yeah.
If we're going non-Jesus,
Well, I was going to say biased Christian answer is Joseph is the best father, even though he just doesn't have a lot of on-screen time.
Yeah. Joseph with his great coat, I think would be a good father figure. Yoav, who do you have for best babysitters?
Sorry. First, I have to retract my almond tree. I got my trees mixed up. I mean, those trees usually grow together, but I got some the species mixed up. So never mind my comment about almond trees. It's a risk when you jump into unprepared into a stream. But strike down my comment about almond trees.
Are they not also sweet smelling though? That looks
sweet, yes, but I was aiming at some other trees. Never mind.
Okay. Who's your pick for best biblical babysitters? Like Cassandra was saying, who are the people who you think are good fathers?
Fathers?
Yeah.
Well, basically, Jacob had 12 kids, didn't he?
Mm-hmm. Is that what makes multiple children that makes you good? What makes a good father? That's it.
Well, he did care for them, obviously, quite a lot. What do you expect of a father?
I don't know. It seems like there's just always a lot of resentment, like with Jacob's sons. There's obviously resentment there, and it's happened before he started having those dreams of being the one worshipped. And it also seems to be like having multiple wives seems to do it too, because the wives are also always like fighting and everything. So kind of like that orbit around the husband, father, whatever, the family, it's kind of they don't feel cohesive, I guess, in a way. I mean, I guess
Mhm.
they are. They'll just like obey and just do whatever, maybe. But I don't know. There seems to be a lot of fracturing in these stories.
Right. Yeah, that's a
So,
good question. I think I actually have to sit on that one for a while because it might be that when you get this close to the characters and you're highlighting their flaws the way that the Bible is, they don't you don't get to see how good at their job people are.
yeah. Well, like you said earlier, the Bible is a catalog of human failure. I mean, that's just something to think about. Maybe the best parents that ever lived are just they're not in the Bible because they raised families where like nothing terrible happened.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, this is a much longer. Yeah. What do you expect of a father? That is a great question. It is, but I need to get back to work. So my friends, this was a great conversation. Much blessings to you. You're supposed to eat something sweet, which oftentimes is an apple dipped in honey for a sweet new year, or pomegranate as well. But I will wish everyone a sweet new year. It's the day of judgment today, so may your names be written in the book of life. And if not, look, Yoav, you still got it. You still got some time. You got some days until Yom Kippur. So let us live in the awe of the days that we're in. These are that's the other title. They're called the days of awe. So thanks, guys, for joining us. I'll see you guys
Okay.
next week.
Happy Mean Girls Day.
Right, that too. Bye.